It's a pleasure to have all of you here. We need to remember that today is Veterans Day, and pay homage to all of our veterans who are here that served, and I'm especially glad that Terrence's here today. I thought maybe he'd be too involved in other things to come today.
No, I was down at the show down at the middle school earlier.
Okay.
But then I had to come do this, and then at 6 o'clock I'll be at Clover Ridge, and we'll spend some time with the veterans and their families there.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Terry.
being here.
Yeah, thank you, Terry.
He cleans up really well, doesn't he?
And I just have to say, because I have to say, happy birthday to the Marine Corps. Because yesterday was the anniversary of the Marine Corps. So two special days in a row for our country, so that's a wonderful thing. So, just a couple quick announcements. There will be a card going around, and I go back up to get it. And we need to sing happy birthday today. Sorry. Sorry. Also,
You know something else about the Marines? They love this. Because the Navy always says, you're part of the Navy.
Oh, absolutely.
The Marine Corps came into existence before the Navy.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that.
And I'm Air Force, so I do.
So he doesn't take sides. So some of you remember Dave that was always here working on engines, and he was a submariner. So he gave my husband a hat down here one day that said, "The only good Marine is a submarine." So you know how that kind of goes. And I did get to watch the placing of the wreath at Arlington today, which is always a really special thing. And I feel grateful because I was actually there for two of those. And it's just a very special event for our country. Okay, we need to remember that our holiday soup supper and cookie walk is coming up. It'll be Tuesday, December 9th. There'll be a form going around if anybody would like to bring. We need some relishes and some different things donated. If you're able to do that and you would just sign the form, I would appreciate it. Deb Holm would appreciate it. She's in charge of the soup supper, and we're still looking for that special soup. You know, we always have homemade chili, chicken noodle soup, Jack's vegetable beef soup, vegetable barley soup, right? And then we have one very special homemade soup, and we have not picked that soup for this year. So if anybody has any ideas or would like to volunteer, if they have a very special recipe, we would certainly appreciate that. So that being said, we will turn the time over to Sue Mayberry. Very grateful for her for doing our program today. Thank you.
We didn't do the birthday.
Happy birthday. Oh, happy birthday.
Sorry, it's been a morning. Forgive me. Thank you. So it is Nancy Cornelius Johnson's birthday. So we
had only been married for 43 years.
Okay. Well, some things you just can't live down. Happy birthday.
And I was talking to Nancy Cornelius, or Nancy Johnson this morning, and I said, I always start my presentations, I don't get the information first, I find like a really great picture, and then try to build the program around that. And so this particular slide was the inspiration for this. And if you take a look, and I'll talk more about this later in the presentation, but notice the airplane in the sky. That is the Mississippi in the background, and of course the horse and wagon. So the gentleman in that flying that plane was born here in Jackson County. Jackson County implement dealers, inventors, and manufacturers. And because this is such a broad category, you know, I've just touched the surface, so I definitely have left out a lot of people. You know, not really intentional, but for an hour-long program, that's just all that would allow. So in the 1800s, Jackson County had become a vital agricultural center, And our museum showcases a lot of the agricultural equipment. I didn't get a chance to go visit that shed before doing this, but raise your hand if you've been to our machine shed down at the fairgrounds. Okay, so you're aware of like all the equipment that's down there. And so really that was an important part of our history and related to the manufacturing trades as well. And then once the railroads arrived in the late 1860s, the factories were able to import raw materials more easily and ship finished products, moving beyond primary manufacturing to more complex operations. So I put manufacturers in there just because a few of these people, maybe did both. They manufactured, then they also sold, but I don't have a lot on the manufacturing part of it or on the inventing side as well. John Heberling Jr., a Miles farmer, was a constable in Iowa Township in 1884. He was born in Berkeley County, Virginia in 1809, and when John was 14, his parents moved to Ohio, and he helped in building a homestead in the wilderness. And then later he moved to Pennsylvania, and then he eventually returned to his old home in Ohio. And it was when he was in his late 40s that he came to Jackson County and was here for over 25 years. He assisted his father, who was a blacksmith, in the manufacture of plows and harrows, and later became so expert that he received journeyman wages in both wood and iron work. He also designed the Heberling running stitch sewing machine. Do we happen to have that in the museum? Is Monty still in here? I do have pictures of it. So he had 5 patents for this from 1878 to 1884, including add-ons plater and ruffler. His brothers helped run the business of manufacturing and selling machines in Ohio. They also had a branch in London, England. Is there still a Heberling family in Miles?
I've never heard the name.
And so this is the Heberling running stitch machine. The running stitch, also referred to as straight stitch. How many people do we have in the audience that sew? So a lot of these terms you're going to be familiar with, and I kind of thought later, are the men in the audience, do you guys know what embroidery techniques are? Have you heard of embroidery? If you're a guy, raise your hand. Do you know what embroidery is? Okay, I should have brought some examples. Nancy, could you tell us, what would you say for embroidery? What would be a quick, easy way to say what embroidery is?
I would say it's just taking colored cloths or thread and making pretty designs with needles.
Okay, that
I mean,
sounds
by
good.
hand.
By hand, yep, yep. Only you could do it with this machine.
You know what? Think about all those old white pillowcases that I have or your grandma's.
Yeah,
That's embroidery.
that was all embroidery. Yep,
Yeah.
thank you.
Some
So
of us still do it.
The running stitch, also referred to as a straight stitch, is one of the basic hand sewing and embroidery techniques on which most other forms of stitching and embroidery are based. It is one of the most popular stitches, used for a wide range of purposes, starting from garment making to embroidery, various articles like pillow covers, dresses, scarves, blankets, purses, lampshades, curtains, table mats, and bed covers. It was also used for applique making. And so applique, you're like cutting, my understanding of applique, you're like cutting out a shape. Let's say it's the shape of a flower, and then you're putting that on top of another piece of fabric, would be applique. And hemming the sides of handmade fabrics to give them a smoother finish. And this is his invention that's shown. And the trimmings were known as the Mother Hubbard style, for dresses, costumes, mantles, and waterproof ulsters for ladies. And I remember that Mother Hubbard style kind of came back in style a little bit when I was in middle school. And we were all wearing these kind of like pinafore tops and things with a lot of ruffles.
She's younger than me.
And so the Mother Hubbard style was shown in dresses, costumes, mantles, and waterproof ulsters for ladies, and they were produced by this little machine with an elegance and precision far surpassing anything that could be done by hand. At the rate of 2,500 stitches per minute, it could do as much work as 20 people by hand. With the assistance of this machine, the most beautiful gauging, gathering, and tucking could be made on a variety of materials. This machine was smaller than the ordinary sewing machine, and it could attach to any table and worked either by hand or by foot. The machines were handsome in appearance and finely finished and tastefully ornamented. All bright parts were nickel plated, kind of like the wood stoves, the burning wood stoves that they had. A lot of those were nickel plated back at that time. And this machine was recently advertised on eBay for $1,647.22. Did it have a bobbin in it? When was it built? Is that what you said? When did he do this? Well, he had the patents for it from 1878 to 1884. Machines were being ordered every day by the West End and city houses and gave every satisfaction. The company received numerous testimonials as to the merits of the machine in practical use, all speaking very highly of it. One lady said, "Permit me to say, from my experience, that I regard the Heberlein gauging machine as indispensable to every milliner," and they're the ones that made the hats, "and dressmaker. It does the work well and thoroughly, and at great saving of time and labor. It is calculated to meet a great want in the trade, and I can cordially recommend that." So this advertisement at the bottom, you can see it says London. A firm of large manufacturers wrote, "We are using your gauging machine in our factory. It supplies over 100 hands with their gauging, thus greatly reducing the cost of our goods." And here are his parents. So John Sr. and Mary Heberlein. So John Heberlein Jr., that we're talking about that just invented that, was the son of John Heberlein and Mary Crumley. His father, a native of Virginia, was in the War of 1812. John and Mary were the parents of 10 children, all of whom lived to mature years. And John was the third born. So the man that's pictured in the photo, his father, which would be John's grandfather, was Andrew Heberlein. And he was actually settled at Wilkes-Barre at the time during the Revolutionary War. And he had immigrated, the grandfather had immigrated to America about 1778. Shown in the photos then are John's parents, and the center photo is a tapestry that shows it must have been made, as a wedding gift, because it has their names as well as the wedding date. And I would assume that that was probably stitched by hand, because they wouldn't have had, their son wouldn't have invented that machine yet. John Heberlein Jr. passed his first vote in 1830, and 10 years later voted for William H. Harrison, being then a resident of Pennsylvania. And in 1856, he supported John C. Fremont at the time of the organization of the Republican Party, to which he gave his unqualified allegiance. He believed in education and that it was the best heritage a father could leave to his children or a nation to his young men. John Jr. started out for himself in partnership with his brother Henry and began the manufacture of threshing machines. So not only did he do the sewing machines, but he was doing threshing machines as well. And he built the first spike machine ever constructed in the United States. It resembled the cylinder and concave machines that were in existence, that were still in existence in 1889. So raise your hand, the men in the audience, do you know what that means, cylinder and concave machines? Because that just, I don't know. Cylinder, I know what it is, but. He also made valuable inventions of grain cleaning devices at various times. The partners secured the exclusive right to manufacture, but there was an error in the patent office, and it didn't get corrected until after the death of the principal patentee, and he died in about 1831. But in the meantime, the firm had done business to the extent of thousands of dollars, but the original patentee, because he had died, it left no representative that could correct the mistake in the patent office. That's just the way it was. This made it difficult for them to make their collections. They continued to manufacture machines, which Mr. Heberling sold throughout Ohio and Pennsylvania. And then John prospered for some time, and they said that, you know, he would have maybe had a more prominent place along with all of these other inventors and so on, but then he got involved with someone that maybe extended his business and financials a little bit too far, and so then that almost cost John Jr., I mean, it just almost ruined him and almost bankrupt him, because then he was responsible for what this other partner did. So John Heberling Jr. traveled extensively, introducing his machines and disposing the patent right to other manufacturers. Upon one of these trips, he met his future wife, Susanna Coble, in Pennsylvania, and they were married in 1837. Susanna was the daughter of John Coble and Susanna Wiley. And after a time, he sold the right of manufacturing these machines to his father-in-law. And then he did that for a while, and then later, Mr. Heberling became a partner with his father-in-law. His father-in-law, Mr. Coble, was also prominently connected with the Franklin Smelting Furnace Company, and in which that business he met with heavy losses. And so then shortly after that, his father-in-law moved farther west. In 1853, John sought to retrieve his fortune west of the Mississippi. He didn't have much money at the time, and he engaged in operating a threshing machine, by which he met a serious accident, having his left hand badly mutilated. On account of this, inflammation set in his left eye, which resulted in the loss of it. These setbacks developed in him a character strong and self-reliant, and proved to him what a man may accomplish through force of circumstances. And the pioneer experiences that Mr. and Mrs. Heberling went through were, you know, very common to what our early ancestors went through as well. You know, they struggled and labored for many years. And then eventually, the Heberlings were comfortable in, they had well-regulated and a well-equipped farm in Van Buren Township. And they said they managed to surround themselves and family with all the comforts of life. As his physicians, Dr. Sugg, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and Wood of Sebula remarked, with one eye, one hand, and one leg, I'm not sure how he lost the leg, you still keep going in your 80th year. And they might have added, he was still able to accomplish more than many a younger man. John and Susanna were the parents of George, who was an attorney for the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railroad Company. And I'll tell a little bit more about George in the next slide. They were also the parents of Milton, who was engaged in real estate and insurance in St. Paul. Hiram, Jay, Mary was the wife of David Osborne. Margaret, wife of Hiram Coleman. Susanna, Henry, who was a railroad man in Marion. Julius was a station agent and telegraph operator in Springville, Iowa. Charlotte was a teacher in Miles. And Alice was the wife of a professor in Illinois. So John and Susanna's sons, George and Hiram, were both soldiers in the Civil War. And so more about George in the next slide. So George Heberling, and this appeared in a newspaper article dated November 8, 2021, Sebula, Iowa. For more than 100 years, a Civil War veteran's remains were unidentified in the Seattle area. With the help of National Nonprofit Missing in America Project, Those remains were identified and recently returned home to Sebula, Iowa to be buried November 8th. Who has heard about this story already? Not familiar with that? Okay. And I know it kind of goes off on a tangent of what we're talking about, but Pastor Barbara Hayden added to the story of the sacred ground in Evergreen Cemetery. It's an honor to touch the past, Hayden added. This gentleman did a lot for Sebula. That gentleman was Corporal George Heberling, who died in 1911. It was 110 years ago that Heberling went to Seattle and he never came back, according to the document provided by the Sebula City Clerk. His unclaimed remains had been shelved in Washington State. No one had claimed them. You know, his family didn't know he was there, or his remains were there. But after the remains were recovered, they were sent back to Sebula in April of 2021, allowing for the burial of George next to the Heberling family. And George had enlisted in 1862, and he had participated in a number of severe battles. He was wounded at Fort Gibson and again at the Battle of Champion Hills. He studied law at Sebula and was admitted to the bar in 1868. He was twice elected representative of the state legislature and served 2 terms and held the office of the chairman of the Republican State Central Committee and also held town and school offices. Myron Collins. Myron Collins was a dealer in stock and farming implements in Bellevue, beginning in 1852. He was also engaged in the manufacture of brick and served as deputy sheriff for 4 years. Collins was the county commissioner from 1872 to 1874. He was born in Allegheny County, New York, and he was the son of Lysander Collins and Amanda Hitchcock. His father had served in the War of 1812. Shown is Myron's father's discharge papers from the War of 1812. Myron married Elizabeth Miller in 1855 in Jackson County. And in the 1880 census, it shows that he was living in Bellevue and he was an implement dealer. The children that were living at home at the time were Stan, age 22, Inez, 16, Charles, 12, and Cornelia, 7. An older child, Mina Collins Dunn, was born in 1855, and she was already married with a child of her own. The 1870 and 1900 census, the occupation listed for Myron was, he was an auctioneer. And Myron is buried in Mount Hope Cemetery. Shown is his daughter, Inez Collins Harrington, and she's in the front row on the right. And she was a pupil of Mount School. This photo was taken in 1936. Is that any relation to you, Judy, at all? David Y. Dupree. He was born in 1830 to Lemuel and Mary Dupree, who were pioneer settlers in St. Clair County. In 1846, David Dupree came to Iowa and settled in Jackson County. He later lived briefly in both Texas and Montana. His wife, Elizabeth Noakes, was a native of Ohio. Mr. Dupree took an active interest in the prosperity of his township and had been elected to various township and school offices. Mr. Dupree manufactured the Jenkins cultivator. Do we have that in our museum, the Jenkins cultivator? Don't know? Okay. And it was a plow that was unequaled by any other make. He also manufactured light and heavy wagons and did general repair work. The Jenkins cultivator was likely invented by Philip R. Jenkins of Cottonville, who was issued a patent for an improvement in cultivators in 1871. Jenkins' family members and companies were also involved in the agricultural machinery trade around that time. The patent shown in the photo has a patent date of August of I got that wrong. We'll put 1987. Must be 1887. According to the Department of the Interior Patent Office. Phoebe Fraze. I think that's how you say the last name. Anybody knows her? Fraze? Benjamin B. Fraze was employed in the firm of Sargent Smith and Company, agents and dealers in agricultural implements and farm machinery, and he was a native of Ohio. He was born in 1842, and he grew up to manhood there in Ohio. When he was 18 years of age, he enlisted in the 16th Ohio Volunteer Infantry, Company B, under Colonel DeCourcy. He was in a number of battles and was wounded at Vicksburg. The 10th Ohio Regiment went in the charge with 1,009 men, and only 253 could answer at roll call the following morning. After serving over 3 years, Fraze enlisted as a veteran and served under General Kilpatrick in the cavalry service, and he was with Sherman in his march to the sea and through the Carolinas. After the war, he returned to Ohio and held the position of foreman for 8 years for the J.F. Sieberlein and Company, who were manufacturers of reapers and mowers at Akron. For 4 years, he held the position of general agent of Iowa, Nebraska, and Dakota for the same firm for the sale of their machines, and he came to Des Moines in 1869, lived there for 5 years, and then he came to Maquoketa. And then since then was engaged in business in Maquoketa. He held the office of town trustee and city councilman, and in 1867 he was united in marriage to Miss Sophia Rahm, a native of Worcester, Ohio. 4 children were born to them: Nettie, George, Harry, and Mary. Benjamin's brother Daniel had died at Vicksburg. Harvey Bates Griffin. He was a farmer and dealer in agricultural implements of the firm of Morris and Griffin. Griffin was born in Warren County, New York, to Lucy Griffin, so shown as his mother. He came to Jackson County in 1846 and soon located to his farm, where he remained. And his farm consisted of 140 acres, which was valued at $40 an acre. And I was just kind of wondering why, that was worth $40 an acre at that time. But he married Miss Mary Wright in 1856, and they had 4 children. Their daughter, Luella Ella, married Eugene Damkier Hansen, and they were the parents of 2 daughters. And at the time of the Ellis History publication, she was the only one of the 4 children that was still living. Headline, they had wheels. Preston, Iowa. Many understanding people are bound when they see this photo to sing, they sure had wheels in them days too. This farm implement shop, owned by early day merchant C.J. Maser, stood at the east end of the principal business street. Does anybody recognize that business? I think the building's still there. It's not there? Okay.
What town?
Preston.
Was that the Cargill building? Marina building?
What street is it on?
It's where,
Yeah.
It's the library.
The library's in that same area now.
but you're saying it's not there anymore?
Not that
Okay,
building.
because it says in later years the building was owned and operated by the Rittner family. And then it later housed a hatchery and feed company, but you're saying it's gone? It's been torn
The
down?
library is.
Okay, the library's there in its place. All right. Charles Mauser was born in Jackson County, and he died in Clinton County in 1944. This is his obituary. For many years, he was the owner of a harness shop and farm implement store. Mauser was the son of Mr. and Mrs. Matt Mauser and was born in Maquoketa. In 1906, he married Emma Berg, who preceded him in death, and then he later married Myrtle McCure. Wedding photos shown of Charles and his first wife, Emma. They were married in Preston and were the parents of Albert and Mildred. And Mrs. Mauser died at the age of 31 from a sudden illness. William Tecumseh Shive. He was a dealer in hardware, stoves, and other agricultural implements, pumps, lime, etc., in Baldwin. Shive was the son of Samuel Shive and Mary Ann Trout, and was born in 1842 in Pennsylvania. In the spring of 1857, he moved to Jackson County, located in South Fork Township. Shive enlisted at Mill Rock in Company H of the 16th and participated in many hard-fought battles. At the Battle of Shiloh, he barely escaped being captured. The bullets flew like hail around him, and 2 of them hit him, one of which was still lodged next to his skull, in the back of his head. Shibe was also in the Battle of Iuka and in the severest part of it, and at Corinth, where he was wounded in the left hand. And it was account of that injury to his hand that he was discharged. So when he came back, he attended school for a while, and then he was teaching until 1870. Then he moved to Baldwin, and in company with his brother Charles, they were in the hardware business. Shibe married Lydia Heil, and his wife was a Jackson County native. They had 3 children, Ada, Bernice, and Jenny, and Shibe served as treasurer of his township. I found an article showing that it said at one time William Shibe, he was the oldest merchant in Baldwin. I'm not sure what year that was. John Stewart. Stewart had learned the trade of a millwright and afterward built many mills in Canada, Michigan, and Illinois. He was of a strong mechanical turn of mind and made a machine to cut grass, the first manufactured in the United States. He claimed that McCormick pirated his idea and derived the benefits from his invention, which consisted of a stationary sickle and movable guards. Has anybody heard anything about that before? Okay. With another, he organized a clock company at Hartford, Connecticut, with a distributing center at Jacksonville, Illinois, and employed a number of men to sell clocks in this section of the country. Later he moved to Bellevue and engaged in general merchandising. His son William G. Stewart sold farm implements and old chain pumps, and later was a distributor for rubber bucket chain pumps. I'd never heard of that before. Rubber bucket chain. Later, William sold real estate and fire and insurance bonds. He was also a city clerk in Bellevue. He was married to Miss Louise Berger, and they were blessed with 4 sons. This unnamed harness shop was located in Andrew. Does anyone know whose that was? Does that look familiar, Nancy?
It could be Dowdles.
It could be who?
Dowdles,
Doddles.
but that might have been,
And I do have more about Doddle. So whether or not that's the other side,
which street is it?
and I
I think it might be on that street.
Might be.
across from it.
Joseph Pierce Eaton was born about 1814 in Connecticut, and the 1850 census shows he was a manufacturer in that state. But the industry, it didn't specify what it was he manufactured. By the next census, he was a railroad agent. And by 1870, he was again involved in manufacturing, but this time in Jackson County. 10 years later, he was farming. He married Martha Brown, and they were the parents of about 9 children. And it looked like there may have been 2 sets of twins in that family. Day and Hobart advertisement. They were dealers of agricultural implements. This ad lists their location as Preston. And then other sources, and so maybe they had 2 locations, or maybe they moved from Preston to Sebula. But in the Jackson County genealogy trails, they wrote, J.C. Day was the largest dealer of hardware in Sebula. And Mr. Hobart, a gentleman of large experience and practical attainments in his particular line of business. Their warerooms were 2-story, 24 by 64, and the blacksmith shops 24 by 40. And from what we hear, their principal aim seems to be to obtain the best known implements, and only those of acknowledged merit and superiority. Jacob Getz Farm Machinery was selling John Deere horse-drawn equipment in Bellevue in 1913. Getz left is shown with Al, I'm not sure how to say that, Wygant? Is that how you say that? Wygant? And and he's in the center, and then on the right in the suit is a traveling salesman. So now Jacob married Louisa Wygant, and so maybe she was a sister to the man in the middle. Their blacksmith building is housed at the fairgrounds. I don't know if it's this same one or, right? Isn't
Yes,
there?
it's not this one, it's the earlier one,
Okay.
but yes, it is at the fairgrounds, in our machine shed.
And that's really something to see if you haven't had a chance to see that. Jacob Getz was born near Bellevue in 1863, the son of Matthias Getz and Kristen Rapp, who were natives of Germany. They immigrated to the U.S. in 1856 and established their home near Bellevue. Jacob had 11 brothers and sisters, and he was the sixth born. He received his education during the winter months and then began work as a farmhand. So he spent 5 years with his first employer, 5 years with the second, and 5 years with the third. Then he was in the dairy business for 11 years. He had 35 cows, and then it was after that he purchased his farm of 115 acres. It was said that Getz possessed considerable mechanical ingenuity, having in his early life assisted his father in the mill. So is Getz, is that still in business, Getz Farm?
They were in business, I remember them as a child.
But they aren't anymore.
They moved, they were a John Deere dealer in Bellevue until the 60s, well,
Until the
past that.
60s?
In the
Okay.
60s, they built the Macocata store
Okay,
and ran them both. And
So they had both
now
stores in the
Macocata store
60s.
south of town, that's been swallowed up by larger dealers.
okay. So even though that was like, he started those businesses, they're different names now, because have been bought and sold. Shown in photo on the right is LL Bartlett Implements, located in Miles. And the photo shows Main Street looking south. The owner of Bartlett Implements was Littlefield L. Bartlett, who was born in 1875. By the age of 5, he and his family were Jackson County residents. The 1910 census shows he was an implement dealer. The 1920 and 30 census list his occupation as an agent in the automobile industry on his own account, so he would have owned the business. Littlefield was married several times and the father of at least 3 children. And we know, like the Littlefield, the last name, but this is the first I've seen for a first name. Littlefield Bartlett is shown with his parents and sisters, and he's standing there on the left. The following businesses advertised in the 1913 plat book, which I was lucky enough to get at the Heritage. So I'll show you those advertisements. Herrick Brothers. The Herrick Brothers were located in Lamont, dealers of hardware and farm implements. Along with, they had vehicles and cream separators, pumps, gasoline engines, stoves, paints, and oils. You had to be diversified. And this may have been operated by John Herrick and his brothers. And the business opened in 1913. Does anybody know for sure? I just couldn't quite track down which. There were a lot of Herricks at that time. So. George Sokol was a dealer in buggies and wagons and all kinds of farm machinery in Monmouth. He was born in 1857 and is buried in the Monmouth Cemetery. He was a brother to Joseph F.J. and Josephine Bezdachek. George married Amanda Grubb, and they were the parents of Jesse Sokol Gilmore, Ethel Sokol Edwards, and Harry Sokol. Any of those names familiar to anybody? Okay. And I think that this is George's mother, because her name was Josephine, and then, her daughter was Josephine. And she was born in Prague in 1813. Here's the Dottle picture I was telling you about. So D.H. Dottle and Sons sold carriages and buggies, wagons, etc. in Andrew. David Heinrich Dottle was born in Germany in 1832. He married his wife Emily, and they were the parents of 9 children. And Bonnie, I think this is the picture you sent to me. This is Dottle's buggy shop which looks different than that other picture we were looking at. So David's son Theodore was a blacksmith apprentice, because you know it said Dottle and Son, and son Frederick Henry was also a blacksmith. And then in the way back when, for 1945, it said, relatives gathered at the Andrew home of Mr. and Mrs. F.H. Dottle for a birthday dinner in honor of the former mayor, who is 80 years old. Mr. Dottle, one of Andrew's oldest residents, is very active in church and business affairs of the community. And at that time, you know, he was 80, and he was the president of the local bank and also the president of the Board of Education. Then another of David's sons, Henry Albert, was a druggist in Andrew. And his other son, George, had died in infancy. And I remember Elda Dottle, and then she's been gone for quite a few years. She was probably related to this family. So I showed you that picture at the very beginning with the airplane. Haven't been able to find out a lot about it, but this is the man that was flying the airplane, Richard Milton McCauley. And so he was born in Jackson County in 1845. He may have just only lived here for a short time, and then later the family moved to Wisconsin and lastly Kansas. And he was married to Mary Ann Young, and they were the parents of 12 children. And he filed at least one patent, and shown is Macaulay's patent for a nut lock. And I'm not sure what application that had. And then here's that photo. So this photo was, it was noted on this photo, it says, Richard Macaulay's aeroplane in town. So, you know, I guess I'm assuming he was flying it, but maybe he just invented it too, and someone else was flying it, because I don't know that for sure. But the caption down below says, Main Street, DeSoto, Wisconsin. And then I was telling you before, you can see the Mississippi River in the background. And then, interestingly, I don't know if you remember, but the Wright brothers were also from Wisconsin. I don't know if there's a connection there. I have to do some more digging to find out, but I just had never seen anything like that before. So I wish I knew more about that. May have to check with Wisconsin. This old threshing machine used to be powered with horses walking on a treadmill. The early pioneers were very creative in their thinking and quite handy with mechanical things. This picture shows how the treadmill was used. The next 3 slides tell of accidents which occurred in operating some farm machinery. This is a horse-drawn cultivator that was located on a farm in Brandon Township, and it was no longer being used. Horse-drawn plows and cultivators were very often dangerous. One man told of helping his dad plow with a horse-drawn plow. His dad was holding the handles of the plow, and the man was just a boy at the time, and he was barefoot. He was driving the horses. The ground could be hard to break up, and sometimes the plow would just jump up, and he ended up losing a toe when the plow jumped up out of the ground. And he thought about this, you know, they'd probably run back to the house, and can you imagine like what the mom said then, you know, to the father? I don't know. And that would have been, you know, that would take a long time, you know, to heal from that injury. The craftsmanship of the old equipment is apparent when looking at this long discarded piece of equipment. It's in remarkably good condition, despite being exposed to the elements for many years. And a closer look shows the craftsmanship involved, you know, in making it in the first place. Charles Schaefer. He was a farmer in Section 15, Green Island. Born in Ohio in 1830, and he came to Jackson County in 1855, where he had since resided. His wife's maiden name was Harriet Baxter, who was a native of Pennsylvania. They had 13 children, and 11 at the time of this, of whom were still living. So there was Margaret and Edward, George, Delilah, William, and Margaret, Nathaniel, Elizabeth, Charles, Harry, and Nettie. And of the 2 that died, one was named Harriet, and the other was not named. So Mr. Schaefer, he met with misfortune while he was at work around a threshing machine, which resulted in the loss of his left leg. he had been one of the trustees of his town, supervisor 2 or 3 terms, and president of the school board. We was kind of amazed about all of these farmers, and they had, you know, they didn't really have it easy with what they had to work with the implements, and yet they still found time to devote all of this to the community, you know, serving on these boards and so on. So Mr. Schaefer, he owned about 160 acres, and with 100 of it under cultivation. Said his land was well watered and had 40 acres of good timber on it. And then this picture, you'll know some of these names I talk about. So Thad Schagel, who's the man on the right in the picture, he had his hand taken off by a corn shredder later that day. And so I thought, you know, they're gathering to do this picture, and then they lose time, and then he was hurrying. But anyway, he lost his hand later that day in 1912. The scene was at a farm 8 miles east of Macokota. In those days, before mechanical field pickers, the horse-drawn bundle wagons brought shocks of stalks that were fed into the shredder. The ear corn was removed and the stalk shredded for livestock roughage. I'm sure all the men in the audience know how all that worked. Herman Straub is holding an oil can on the left. So front row, second from the left. And then a young Ed Kirchhoff, who grew up on a farm east of Macokota, is the 4th from the left in the back row, with his hand in his pocket. And this photo was contributed by Tom Straub. And that is my last slide. Would anyone like to come up and share anything about having to do with any of these topics?
Is that house still there?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know who it belonged. I don't know who it belonged to. And it's kind of hard to tell. You don't really see enough of it to maybe make it look like it's very distinctive.
How did you find the picture?
That picture? I think this picture was in, there's that little black book, what is it called, Images of the Past? I think it came from there, pretty sure. So if you wanted, and I think that's in the genealogy room. But that's all that is said about it in that picture. Does anyone have any questions? Although I probably won't know the answer to any of them. Bonnie, do you have anything to add as far as what?
Well, I hope that everybody will go to our machine sheds, both of them, because we have some absolutely wonderful artifacts of the type that you've seen here. We have some things that are quite rare. We know that a couple of our things are John Deere implements that John Deere would like to buy from us because they don't have actual ones in their collection. So we have some really nice things, and Phil Jen has done a remarkable job, especially in the Penny Grove machine shed on the fairgrounds, of organizing everything by time, you know, as they were invented. So I hope that everybody will look at that. And then the other thing I think is so important that Sue has done a good job of mentioning is how many really innovative people have lived in Jackson County through the time. People who have invented awesome things. And I mean, everything always gets replaced with something better as time goes along. But we've had some great inventors here that have things that have just gone on a long time.
Yeah, and I don't know that they've gotten the credit, you know, for it, because then, and maybe they have where they've gone, you know, they've moved to another county or another state. And I know sometimes some of you can't hear, so just kind of recap what Bonnie said, that we do have some wonderful agricultural implements in both of our machine sheds, and Bill Gent did a wonderful job of organizing, cleaning, I think restoring, and, you know. So if you haven't had a chance to look at those, please do. And then you said John Deere would like to buy some of the implements.
I know that we have two things that they do not have, that were made by John Deere, that they just have never
Been
been
able to find. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.